Nigeria re-emerges Africa's biggest economy. World Bank support developing economies to combat COVID-19. IMF World Bank Group suspends registration for 2020 spring meetings and goes virtual. Mobil to become the fourth company to delist from the NSE in 4 months as the Nigerian Stock Exchange demutualized. This is Business Express reaching you from Abuja, Nigeria's capital, and I am Liakatun Baba today. Well, we'll begin the business for the day. As the world continues to grapple with the impact of COVID-19, also known as coronavirus, the IMF and World Bank Group has suspended registration for 2020 spring meetings. The IMF said that the 2020 spring meetings of the multilateral institution will be conducted daily by virtual channels to avoid large gatherings in view of the fast-spreading coronavirus. Registration for all delegates, it announced, has been suspended. And still in view of the devastating effect of the coronavirus, the World Bank has committed $12 billion in aid for developing countries grappling with the spread of the virus. The emergency package includes low-cost loans, grants, and technical assistance. The action comes as leaders around the world pledge to shield their countries from the economic impact of the outbreak as a result of warnings that a slowdown from the outbreak could push countries into recession. The aid is also intended to help countries improve their public health response to the crisis as well as work with the private sector to reduce the economic impact. Now, similarly, Nigeria and the Japanese government have signed an $18.2 million grants agreement to strengthen the capacity of network laboratories of the Nigeria Center for Disease Control to facilitate accurate laboratory and medical investigations. The fund will also be used to strengthen the Nigeria Center for Disease Control in its surveillance system of infectious diseases and improve its capacity for early response to public health concerns in Nigeria. The Minister of State, Budget and National Planning, Clem Agba, at the Ticket 7 conference in Tokyo last year said the initiative will help in complementing efforts of the Nigerian government in the fight against infectious diseases. Now, Nigeria's 2020 budget may be one of the major casualties of the ravaging coronavirus as fears of a major economic slump sent oil prices to their lowest in more than a year. The budget, which was based on a projection of oil production of 2.18 million barrels per day, with an oil benchmark of $57 per barrel, dropped to about 49 barrels over the weekend. OPEC Secretary General Mohammed Barkindo said demand by major consuming economies have declined by as much as 3.8 million barrels a day, but OPEC is strategizing on how to best mitigate the effects.
By all the participating countries in this alliance between OPEC and non-OPEC to come to common position this week when we convene here in Vienna to take very decisive and active measures to mitigate against the continuity of this slump.
Already data from the OPEC Secretariat in Vienna indicates a slight increase in the basket price of crude oil to $42.65 per barrel. Meanwhile, the OPEC Secretariat in Vienna has limited the number of delegates expected at its 178th extraordinary meeting slated for 5th and 16th March. Members of the press are also barred from the meeting as a precautionary measure to curb the spread of COVID-19. The meetings will be live streamed via OPEC website and official YouTube account. Now, this should interest every Nigerian. Nigeria has overtaken South Africa again as the biggest economy in Africa following South Africa's slip into a second recession in just 2 years. Data from Statistics South Africa show that South Africa's gross domestic product shrank by 1.4% in the fourth quarter of 2019 following a revised 0.8% contraction in the third quarter. Nigeria's GDP grew by 2.55% in the fourth quarter of 2019. Its highest quarterly growth since the recession in 2016. The country's economic growth rose by 2.27% in 2019, compared to a growth rate of 1.91% in 2018. Nigeria's economic growth beat forecasts in the fourth quarter, helping its economy to expand the most in 4 years in 2019 as oil output increased and the central bank took steps to boost credit growth. And so Nigeria and South Africa jointly account for almost half of sub-Saharan Africa's total gross domestic product. And at present, the two giants, the second giant has fallen for a second time. We will talk about the pros and cons of this development shortly, and our guest is an investment expert, Ogbonna Okuku. Thank you for coming to Business Express, and you're welcome.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
And so we're looking at Nigeria as well as South Africa, the two biggest economies on the continent,
Yeah.
rather. And we've seen Nigeria record some growth, while South Africa, on the other hand, just went down again.
Yeah.
How would you describe this scenario?
Yes, technically you can say everybody knows that recession is when you have a negative growth in your economy, and then if you record that like in 4 quarters, your country will slip into recession. But socially, I like to define recession as a decision taken by those that have resources to decline in investing or putting money into an economy. So a lot of things that South Africa didn't do well. These xenophobic attacks that happened sometime last year. Investors are very funny. What they do most of the time is that when they don't see clarity, when they don't see consistency, and when they don't see, that their monies or their investment will be secured in any economy, they begin to pull back. So for me, what led to this second recession is the fact that a lot of people are standing out, watching to see the consistency, the policy consistency in South Africa, which they have not seen. So the investors will rather wait and see what the government will do, in regards, supporting the economy. And then, whether we like it or not, if you don't take the right decisions in making your environment favorable for investors, there are other places waiting for the same liquidity or the funds or investment, and they will receive those investments. So bringing it down to Nigeria, you can see that over the past, since after the elections, the consistency that we have seen in policy, because it's still the same government driving the same agenda at the higher scale. So you see there's more there's higher confidence in trying to do, in people who want to do business in Nigeria. And then that consistency is exactly what a lot of investors that's one of the things that make investors want to come and do business in your country. So I think that has worked well for us as a country. And then you see the Central Bank of Nigeria have also pushed in a lot of interventions towards diversifying the economy, because the government have said it, we want to diversify the economy away from oil. So diversification is, and then the energy that is being put into agriculture today is beginning to yield a lot of results. So these are the things you see. There's growth. People are the lending portfolio from banks now have increased because central bank has put its foot on the ground and say, you guys have to do what you're supposed to do, because if you're a deposit money bank, you're supposed to lend to people who manufacturers, you're supposed to lend to people to do business, and those things are beginning to yield results.
Well, considering the scenario we have on ground now, we've seen economies cut down their ratings, nations cut down their lending rates so that the banks can borrow to the real sector. Now, early this year, the IMF downgraded Nigeria, the growth forecast for the year. Also this week, we've also seen the Standard & Poor's also downgrade Nigeria. So if we're looking at all this, many developing nations are also facing downgrades. Should this be a cause for alarm?
No, since it's a general thing, because I mean, from the IMF report, it was clearly stated there that because of the dwindling price of oil, because everybody still knows, in as much as we're working so hard to come out of oil is still one of the major sources of income for our nation. So because of that, the growth forecast that they made for Nigeria, specifically, they had to drop it a bit by 0.5%. So it's going to be a general thing, and then owing to also the fact that the coronavirus thing is hitting everywhere, everybody's being a bit conscious, so it's going to slow down on growth generally globally. So I think it's not something for anybody to be concerned about. I think it's just something for everybody to begin to now look inwards and see, how do we grow more within ourselves? What are the things we have? What are the comparative advantage that we have within our system, so that we can put more energy on such things.
Now talking energies, so many years back as an athlete, my coach used to say this, that it's very easy to become a champion, but so difficult to maintain being a champion, because everybody is training to beat you. Nigeria is back on the top sport. How do we sustain our dominance in that sport as a nation, and what policies should Nigeria be looking to put in place this year, that things are so tight, to ensure that we remain a dominant force, not just in Africa but in the world?
See, I've said it, on so many platforms, that for me, for the first time, I've seen a government say they want to do a thing and then they stand by it. Okay, the border closure, the policies that, the executive orders that have been issued and all of that. You can see that the government is really serious about doing certain things. I am more concerned about the citizenry, understanding what the policy of government is, being able to key in. Then, if there are policies that need to be sustained, and those policies are still towards the interventions, towards agriculture, the support system that is being provided, by the government, to see how to, to get in other sectors of the economy to, begin to flourish. Now, are there new things that needs to be done? Of course there are. Because if you're talking about agriculture, you need to now begin to look at interventions towards what I call farm gate infrastructure support program. These are things that will not just be a program for the federal government, but those at the local level, because the farms are in the local areas. So you need to design programs that you get the local government chairman, the state governors, to begin to pump money towards getting, goods from the farm straight to the market. Now, again, there's a lot of support now towards, industrializing the country. Now, if you must continue to industrialize, you need to now begin to do an advocacy towards, has always been an import-dependent country when it comes to selling commodities. You need to now begin to reach out to some of these major importers, begin to tell them things that you go to look for outside, we can provide them here. Then that will also mean you have to do an indexing indexing around your raw material support structure.
I was actually going to ask you, some school of thought believe that with the border closure, yes, the customs have been able to rake in some huge amount of revenue, but it is not enough. Some schools will say that, no, let's see how much are we exporting, for instance. What are we remitting back into the economy rather than celebrating collections?
Yeah, you see, like, see, when it comes to export is quite technical. I say technical in the sense that your standards have to also meet what is required out there. So if you don't begin to, I mean, baby steps, if you don't begin to get your people to understand that you don't, when it comes to export, you can't cut corners. So the orientation has to be a lot. There are just few people playing in that space. Now you get more people into this space to see, okay, for example, if you begin to want to take what's it called, cassava flour to maybe countries like China or India or anywhere else that is needed, and then you can't meet the standard, because from the time you pull the cassava out of the ground and the time you process, it cannot stay more than 48 hours for you to get the exact quality that is required out there. So it comes back to what I said earlier. The infrastructure has to be there for the farmers to move their goods from the farm, which is the cassava, because you need just that window of 48 hours to start processing, because if you don't remove the moisture in the cassava, it begins to decay. So these are the things we all have to, that's be a holistic way of looking at it, so that you can meet the standard for export. So for now, yes, whatever it is that you can't get, begin to work on that, and then begin to also give people knowledge on certain things that they need to, need to do so that they can play in that space. I think that's the way to look at it.
Okay, so do you see that mounting concerns that there might be a global recession? Do you experience that fear, and what sort of trade partnerships should Nigeria now be entering in?
Fear would that be a global recession? Yeah, I don't see a global recession hitting this time. I see a solution, okay, coming out from, because they say necessity is the mother of invention. So everybody's, everybody, all hands are on deck, to see how we can come out of this whole quagmire, or the issues that, have bedeviled everybody here on earth. So, but if we're talking about partnerships, there has to be areas of comparative advantage. For me, is Nigeria first. What are the things we need that exist in other countries in Africa? What are the things that we have that they need? Those are the things we have to focus on, and then begin to. That's the first thing you must do, because before you now start thinking of going into partnership with any country in Africa.
But we've begun to see some nations cut back on lending rates. Just yesterday, the U.S. also announced a cutback. Do you see Nigeria cutting lending rates?
I don't see that happening, because for me, it's always been the monetary policy our managers have all, they've been looking at our inflation rates before, as a bane to that, cutting down on lending rate. Rather, they prefer supporting the development finance institutions to lend at a lower interest rate. But for the commercial banks, no, the lending rates, I don't see them cutting down. Okay,
so what is your general outlook, and how long do you see this situation playing out?
And I give it the next, the next three to 4 months. It will all play out. It will just come and pass.
I will just get back.
Yeah, everything will go. I'm very optimistic that something that, since it's a creation, is also going to be that the solution will also be created, because everybody's working. Like I said, I've heard, I don't know how authentic that is, there's been a breakthrough in Israel. I don't know if that's true, but there'll be breakthroughs definitely as far as this coronavirus thing is concerned. Of course,
we'll keep our fingers crossed.
Definitely.
And wait for the breakthroughs. Thank you very much, Abuna, for coming on the program.
Yeah,
now let's move on. Oil prices staged a rebound this week, in part from investors buying, but mostly because of emergency action from central banks and promising notes from OPEC members. What are the prices of oil and other commodities? Let's find out. Now, key players in the Nigerian Stock Exchange have met to finalize moves through resolutions for the demutualization of the exchange at a court-ordered meeting in Lagos. Members at the court-ordered meeting voted for the re-registration of the exchange as Nigerian Exchange Group PLC.
Very auspicious and important day for the history of the capital market. It's a one-in-a-lifetime event. A lot of demutualization exercises have happened all over the world, and for those jurisdictions where this have happened, it has been a good story. And you agree with me that this will totally transform the operations of the exchange going forward. You know that there will be the exchange will be separated into regulation and also the business aspect of it. And you do know that eventually in the future we expect that the exchange itself would list in the exchange.
Having taken this step at the court-ordered meeting for demutualization, that's the conversion of the exchange from a company limited by guarantee to a company limited by shares with shareholders. And you will find that the board is going to move from being constituted by members selected from within the existing capital markets, organizations to individuals who are independent. And I would imagine that over the next 3 years, as this transition takes place, a time will come that you look at the board of the Nigerian Stock Exchange and it would probably reflect people who have had no history actually of dealings with the exchange, the independence that the market would be looking for.
European markets turned positive as investors monitor virus spread and interest cuts. Buster Abel reports on performance of stock markets across the globe.
Global markets have continued to react to the U.S. Federal Reserve announcing an emergency 50 basis point cut to interest rates on Tuesday. In early trading of Wednesday, 4th of March, Dow Jones Industrial Average Futures indicated a rise of about 550 points at the open. Nasdaq Composite and S&P 500 also indicated a positive open. Stocks in Asia were higher. The Shanghai Composite added 0.63% to 3,011.67. Hang Seng Index 0.24% higher as of its final hour of trading, and also the Nikkei closed fractionally higher at 21,100.06. European market traded slightly higher. DAX topped 0.11%, FTSE 100 0.15%. African stocks were mostly positive as well, with Tunisia's Tunidex, Nairobi's All Share, and Ghana's GSA Composite posting gains.
Now, on the Nigerian stock market, 11 PLC, also known as Mobil, is set to become the 4th company to delist from the NSE in 4 months, joining the rank of Dangote Flour Mills, AG Leventis, and Continental Reinsurance. Meanwhile, at the close of trade this Wednesday, the all-share index gained 0.61% to end the session at 26,415.54 points. Market capitalization also inched up to 13.7 trillion naira. The volume of trade was 307.7 million, valued at 2.8 billion naira in 4,419 deals. Well, enough time on the program to go to the money market and see how the naira is trading against other major currencies. And that's it on this edition of Business Express. Be informed you can access all previous episodes on NTA's YouTube channel. You can also communicate with us on Twitter, and the handle is NTA News Now. The hashtag is BizEx. Business Express returns Friday. I am Leah Katun Babatunde. Do have a wonderful week ahead.